It was dawn bright in London when the lights of the studio of Good Morning Britain shone harshly on the two figures across the polished desk. On one side sat the veteran broadcaster Richard Madeley, his crisp morning suit gleaming, his voice calm, but his eyes sharp and expectant. Opposite him sat the young Labour minister, Henry Latham, fictional name. He had been invited to defend his party's new migrant policy proposals, and already the studio's tension was crackling. Richard leaned forward, tapping the stack of papers before him. He addressed the minister directly. "Minister, thank you for coming in, but let me begin with a simple question. You have repeatedly described the new bill as robust and fair, yet ministers admit that tens of thousands of arrivals remain unscreened, unsheltered and unpaid. Do you accept that your government has lost control of the situation?" Henry swallowed. He opened his mouth, his words coming in staccato bursts. He started, "Well, yes, we recognize that the challenge is significant, and we're working with our partners." His voice hesitated on each clause, his face betraying the familiar flush of insecurity. Richard's eyes narrowed. "Working with your partners? Let's be precise, shall we? The last quarterly figures show that over 45,000 asylum applications remain unresolved, that hotels are still housing migrant families for £8 million a day, and that the welcome centres are overflowing. How is that fair or controlled?" His tone was polite, but iron-edged. Henry shifted uncomfortably. "We believe the system we inherited was deeply flawed. We're putting in new measures." Richard interrupted, voice rising just a notch. "Minister, the public is asking, who is in charge here? Because it feels like you inherited chaos, but now you are in the driver's seat. Survivors arrive with nothing. Vulnerable people are being housed indefinitely, and meanwhile, criminals are being deported or not deported, and you keep saying you'll get on top of it. That sounds like platitude, isn't it?" Henry stuttered. I have said that. We are taking action. We have outlined a plan. We will announce it in the weeks ahead." At this, Richard's look turned terser. He raised his voice. "In the past month, one flight carried convicted criminals released after short sentences dispatched with £2,000 bank cards. Viewers want to know, does your government think £2,000 and a one-way ticket is a proper answer to the public's concern?" The studio fell silent. The audience visibly shifted. Henry's lips parted, closed, then opened again, but the words came in fits. "The government's position is clear. We do not tolerate crime. We do not tolerate illegal arrivals, but we also have obligations under our international law." He fumbled, glanced at his notes, and attempted to salvage. "We are doing a review. We are working the system. We are making the case that—" Richard slammed his hand lightly on the table, startling Henry. "Minister, you've had weeks of public commentary. This morning you are struggling to complete a single sentence without hesitation. The public expects leadership, not uncertainty. Which is it? Control or chaos?" Henry's face reddened. He inhaled sharply and attempted a structured answer. "We are in control, but we accept there are challenges, and we will launch further reforms to expedite decision-making, increase the removals of those who fail legal entry criteria, improve housing for those eligible, and crack down on illegal pathways." His voice wobbled on the word expedite. Richard nodded slowly, leaning back. "Thank you. Now, let me ask you this. When you say improve housing, what guarantees can you give that you will stop the indefinite hotel stays? When you say crack down, can you identify how many people have been removed in the last 6 months versus the year before? And when you talk about reforms, do you recognize that the government's own statistics show the backlog has grown, not shrunk?" He held up a printed sheet. "Here, your own Home Office admit the decision rate fell by 15% last quarter." Henry swallowed again. He opened his mouth to reply, but the cue light changed. Susanna Reid's voice sounded off camera. Time, thank you, Minister. The minister sat frozen for a moment, then managed, We will publish the full figures next month. Richard gave him a tight smile. Thank you for appearing. I hope next time you'll be better able to answer the basic question, are you running the system, or is it running you? As the cameras stopped rolling, the behind-the-scenes crew exhaled. The minister rose to leave, dignity intact but shaken, while Richard sat still, peering into the camera one last time for the closing segment. Later that afternoon, the story erupted online and in the press. Headlines such as Madeley humiliates minister and Labour migrant row deepens trended. Social media clips of Henry's stuttering answers circulated rapidly. Political commentators dissected Richard's grilling. Some praised the broadcaster for holding power to account. Others accused him of grandstanding. The minister's office released a brief statement. The government accepted that the system was under significant pressure and promised swift action. Within the corridors of Westminster, the mood darkened. Senior Labour figures gathered behind closed doors, discussing damage control strategies. One whispered, "That interview may be the tipping point. The narrative is shifting. Not, we have a plan, but we don't have control." Across town, viewers of Good Morning Britain debated the exchange. Some viewers felt vindicated, praising the broadcaster for asking the hard questions. Others lamented the tone, saying the minister should have been given more time to articulate a complex policy. On coffee table WhatsApp threads, one user typed, "He looked like he didn't know his brief." Another replied, "Madeley didn't have to shout, the stutter told the story." By the evening, opposition parties pounced. The opposition leader accused the minister of failing to show competence. The minister himself released a short video clip, speaking directly to camera. "I know there's concern, I know there's frustration, we are determined to sort this." But some viewers found his tone flat, his words rehearsed. In the studio archives, producers replayed Richard's prior comments about ministers dodging questions and wondered whether this moment would be cited in broadcast journalism classes as an example of a combative morning show interview. And the migrant bill. It remained on the agenda, but today the narrative carried an added weight. Not just what the government will do, but whether it can do it. The row triggered by the interview cast a spotlight on the human stories behind the stats, tents, to hotels, to families waiting, and on the pressure cooker environment in which decisions were being made. The next morning, Richard opened the show. "Good morning. Yesterday's interview raised questions we'll be returning to today because this story isn't over." And the studio lights came on again, the crews stirred, and the game of political accountability surged forward. The fictional scene illustrates how a high-profile broadcaster like Richard Madeley might exert pressure in a live broadcast, how a stuttering minister can become emblematic of institutional weakness, or at least the perception of it, and how media policy and public opinion intersect in a migrant policy controversy. If you like, I can craft an alternate version from the minister's perspective or extend the story into subsequent fallout. Would you like that?